morning everyone. Welcome to the Tablelands Regional Council Ordinary Meeting for July. Could I remind everyone to turn off their devices, please? Do we have apologies? No apologies? Could I ask everyone to be upstanding, please? I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land that we meet on today and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Also, while we're standing, could we please observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect for the members of our community who have recently passed. We wish their family and friends peace and comfort during this challenging time. Thank you. Item 6, declarations of any material personal interest, conflicts of interest by councillors or senior council officers. Councillor Clifton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I declare a conflict of interest in relation to item 12.1 TW Headley, reconfiguration of a lot, and also in item 12.2 Robert and Edith Henry reconfiguring a lot. And I will be leaving the room.
Thanks. Have you got those, Jackie? Do we have any other conflicts? Councillor Hodge.
Yes, Mr Mayor, in regards to 13.4, the appointment of the chair of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, that person and I are actually on the directors of the Board of Procurement, and we're also the members of the Finance Committee, so I'll declare it destroyed conflict of interest, and I'll leave the meeting while that's been discussed.
Fantastic. Thanks, Councillor Hodge. Any other declarations? Thank you. Item 7, confirmation of minutes. Can I have a mover of the Tablelands Regional Council June minutes? Councillor Wilkes is moving. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Vilney seconding. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 8, business arising, actions out of those minutes. Yeah. So we've got some matters arising there. Councillor Hodge, that one was from you. Has that been dealt with?
Yes, I've got it. The General Manager has given me that explanation for that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other matters rising from the minutes of the June meeting? No? Okay. Now we also had our budget meeting on June the 30th. Could I have a mover and seconder of the minutes of the budget meeting of June 30. Councillor Hodge is moving. And a seconder, please. Councillor Cardew is seconding. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. Any matters arising? Thank you. Okay, we'll move along to item 9. We do have a deputation this morning. We have members of the local community here. We have Lou Livingston and Mia Isherwood who are going to come up and make a presentation on behalf of the community. If you'd like to come up to the end of the table here and take a seat. Thanks very much, and yeah, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, councillors, TOC staff. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Mia Isherwood and I'm a resident of the Tablelands based at Lake Eacham and a small business owner with a background in environmental science and law. I wish to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered today and all Tablelands traditional owner groups, their elders past, present and emerging. On behalf of the focus group members who are involved in developing the Tablelands 2030 plan and the broader Tablelands community, we thank the Tablelands Regional Council for supporting this planning process and paving the way for a genuinely collaborative approach to implementing this plan. Nicole and Blake and the team within Council did an amazing job of bringing together interested residents and harvesting ideas about the shared future we wish to create. The resulting plan reflects the diversity of this region and its unique cultural and natural values. The inclusive and participatory nature of this planning process has contributed to strong levels of community ownership and pride in the Tablelands 2030 plan. It has also helped to improve community understanding of the role of Council and the breadth of Council's responsibilities, and has strengthened Council's profile in the community.
Hello everyone, and thank you very much for having us today. I'm Louise Livingston. I'm also a resident. I live at Upper Barron, and my partner and I run 2 small businesses in town, Freestone Associates, which is a health planning and evaluation consultancy, and nature-based tourism business, Old Mates Farm. So I've also, with others, been part of the focus group and planning activities around the development of this community plan over the last 6 months. We've had a whole series of very broad and extensive engagement with residents. We've had representative groups that have met in November, again in December and in April, and then focus group members where we met 3 focus groups, October, November and then in May. There was extensive discussion, debate and a consensus over some of the key areas that would make the Tablelands region where people want to live and thrive. A vision statement was developed around celebration, around sustainability, around inclusiveness and around resilience. And these were the key areas that everyone agreed were vital for the future of the region. From that, key priority areas were then defined. Community and the sense of community and the sense of place were very important aspects. Healthy lifestyle, this was an absolutely critical element that the groups defined, particularly with the the expanding region. Environment, which Mara will talk a bit further about, infrastructure and economy. So they were the key priority areas that came out of discussion with everyone.
The planning process took a values-based approach and highlighted just how significant the Tablelands is in terms of its unique natural values. The region's rich biodiversity, rural landscapes, tourism and recreational opportunities, healthy climate, fertile soils, opportunities for renewable energy, regenerative agriculture and employment in sustainability-related industries were identified as key elements of the shared vision for the Tablelands. how we go about maintaining and protecting our tablelands environment from a range of pressures, how we build community resilience and position ourselves to mitigate, adapt and respond to climate change impacts were cross-cutting themes in the plan. In the environment priority area, the desired outcomes include empowering community and decision makers to take informed action to mitigate and respond to climate change impacts, regulating, incentivising and encouraging sustainable development, including greener housing design, the shift towards a circular economy approach to avoid and minimise the creation of waste, regenerative and sustainable agricultural approaches that maintain and restore soil health and biodiversity and minimise impacts on the natural environment, landscape restoration and maintenance of biodiversity, and fostering local livelihoods and innovation in emerging environmental restoration industries. These objectives reflect the contemporary aspirations of many Tablelands residents to look after what we have here and to seek out opportunities to enhance and diversify our economy and start to transition to more sustainable industries and land management practices. This approach is in line with the objectives of the TRC's climate risk strategy and partnership with FNQ Rock in the Climate Resilient Alliance, as well as the Smart Green Economy project that seeks to position Cairns and the Far North Queensland region as a national leader in this space.
The other key areas that I was involved in the focus groups were around the community, healthy lifestyles and infrastructure. In these areas, key themes that came out was about the connection of people in our community, how we support community, how we get access to services, particularly health services and good health outcomes. The pressures that of the rapidly expanding Tablelands area is putting massive pressure on the health services, and that was certainly came through in all the discussions. Community, places where people could gather, places where people could build strengths, and that a resilient culture could be developed in the Tablelands. Opportunities for people, things like identified in the economy and infrastructure around increasing nature-based tourism, looking at protection of agriculture, supporting landholders to transition to other secondary industries if that's required. So all the culture, acknowledgement and a strengthening around acknowledgement of First Nations peoples and the history on the Tablelands. These were key areas that were interwoven across the plan.
With the plan now complete, we need to turn our minds to its launch and implementation. How do we now work together to translate aspirations in the plan into meaningful on-ground actions that build on the positive relationships the Council has fostered with community over the course of developing the plan? The launch of the plan will be a great way to celebrate the completion of the plan and also to start to socialise the plan with the wider community and other prospective partners and sponsors. We appreciate Council's undertakings to promote the Tablelands 2030 plan through other channels and to continue to involve community members in annual review processes and the refresh of the plan in 2027. We also understand that the priorities and desired outcomes in the community plan will inform and be incorporated in Council's corporate plan and other strategic documents and internal decision-making and prioritisation processes. This consistency and alignment will be vital in terms of ensuring the plans and Council's credibility and to build and maintain community, partner and investor confidence to collaborate in implementing the plan. We look forward to working with Council in coming months to co-design a process for catalysing community-led action to deliver on plan priorities. This will help us to identify the implementation pathways, investment opportunities and partnerships needed to support the priority actions in the plan. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Very good. Yeah, look, and can I just say on behalf of Council, I'd like to thank not only you but all the people who actually contributed to the community plan, because it has been a long process. I know Blake and Nicole have worked pretty hard to try and pull it together, but they couldn't have done it without buy-in from the community. So I really think we did get good buy-in at this time. And some of the things that you've highlighted in your presentation today really position the Tableland well as as a place of choice to live, and how we continue to build that value add with those things that now that the shift's on, how do we not only make it more attractive but do things in a sustainable way so that we're not overcooking things. Those things are really important, and getting the balance right is really important. So thank you very much, not just for today, but for everything you've done. Councillors, do you have any questions for Lou or Mayor?
Just one thing, just to say thank you, as the Mayor said, thanks very much for the input you've done. It can't be done without, as the Mayor says, without community input. So we wouldn't be here where you are now if you didn't do it. And your vision statement, I think, is a very important statement. I think it's really succinct. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Christian, please.
You may know that at the last, maybe not the last meeting before we decided to create an agricultural advisory committee, and going through this to extend our relationships with the agricultural sectors of the TRC. That what you produced here, what you presented, represents a really good input to that start of that process, and I thank you for it. We would have had to search for it otherwise, but now we've got it. Thank you.
Wonderful. We hope it can find its way into many different channels that council.
Yeah, on that, I think there was aspects in it that will meet every area. I think it's really broad and interconnected.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much. Moving on, councillors, we've come to item 12.1. Yeah, Councillor Clifton, thank you. Item 12.1, TW Headley Proprietary Limited, reconfiguration of one lot into 143 lots, Davies Road, Malanda. Can I have a mover and seconder to open the report for discussion? Councillor Wiltz is moving and Councillor Cardew is seconding. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for our officers for coming up there. Councillor Wiltz.
I might just hand it over to people with the expertise in this area to give us a rundown of where we're at right here now.
Very good, thank you.
Well, just in terms of the application before council today and the officer's recommendation that's in my report to council, it's actually for a preliminary approval, which is the approval in part, as there were some gaps in the application, I feel, that needed to be addressed, and I believe it's already been sort of discussed at length with council in terms of the need for an infrastructure agreement related to the Malanda Davies Road water supply scheme connection. So I've only just come back today after having COVID, so I'm not fully up to speed on what discussions have gone on in the last couple of days while I've been away.
Thanks, Dan. Councillors? Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, we have had discussions, and I'm not willing to support the officer's recommendation as it is for preliminary approval. So I'd like to move a motion to have an alternate approves the application with conditions. And there it is on the board there. That's what I'd like to move.
Councillor Cardew is moving the alternative motion that is up on the screen there. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Cardew? Councillor Hodge is seconding. Councillor Cardew, would you like to talk further on that?
No, I think everybody's had an opportunity to look at the conditions and the like, so I'm happy with that proposed alternate motion.
Councillors? Councillor Billney.
Through the chair, I've just got a couple of comments I'd like to make potentially about the history of this. The application for development has been in a stagnant state for quite a substantial period of time, and I think it's now timely that there is a demonstrated need in the Malanda district with families wanting to move and live in that precinct. This will supplement a shortage in housing stocks, particularly in this category. My understanding of this application is basically a new application assessed against the current planning scheme and is zoned rural residential. As such, it's code accessible under the current planning scheme and does not have to go to public consultation. I have had some conversations with the public and they were a little bit concerned that they had no input this time round. And that's the reason why this is the case. It's also my understanding that any prior conditions that were approved on the former application do not necessarily automatically transfer across, and this is why the assessment has been made against the current planning scheme. There was a couple of things within it that was of interest to me. I've read those conditions of approval, the revised one, and I feel that they do adequately address the sensitive areas within the proposed development footprint. That is the existing nature is the regulated vegetation, the wildlife habitat, and which is captured under the matters of state environmental significance. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Billney. Councillors? Councillor Hodge?
Yeah, just quickly, I'd just like to talk to the positives about this application. This will give an enormous economic stimulus to this economy in Malanda. I think everyone's aware that there is no land available out there now. Even the last one that was approved, the white development, I believe is totally sold out off the plan. So there's no actually land available. So in the economic sense, what this brings 143 families into the land area and to TRC is absolutely phenomenal what it does in regards to construction, roadworks, what 143 new families bring to the region, whether it's be extra school teachers, policemen, nurses, whatever. So I'm very, very happy. I do believe that in my view, that the applicant has demonstrated compliance with all the relevant instruments. So I'm very, very happy to second the motion and look forward to development going very, very soon. That's it. Thank you. Very good.
I'm just wondering if perhaps you, Kelly, if you could, for the benefit of councillors and for the people in the gallery, if you can summarise what's in this alternative recommendation. If you could just summarise that in layman's terms.
In 3 words or less, certainly.
Yeah, just so we can fully capture exactly what it is.
Kelly, you can have 5 words.
Certainly through the chair. So in the preliminary approval recommendation from officers outlined critical issues that we considered were still outstanding prior to issuing a development permit. Fundamentally, they were the flood immunity and the dam walls. It was geotechnical investigations, and it was obviously water supply.
I've had the opportunity to review these conditions, and I think they adequately address those critical components. They still require the applicant to address the outstanding matters, but in the context of a development permit as opposed to a preliminary approval.
Very good.
Are there any questions for the officers, councillors? Any further comment? Okay, those in favour of the alternative recommendation? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks to the planning team for getting those conditions.
Yeah, look, thanks very much. And Dan, look, I know you did a lot of work in the lead up to this as well, so we really appreciate everything that's been done.
Feeling well home with the flu.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Now the next item, Councillor Clifton's also got a conflict. Can we just continue on? We don't need to call him in and send him out again? No. All right, so yeah, Councillor Clifton declared a conflict of interest in the next item, which is 12.2. Robert and Edith Henry reconfiguring a lot, one lot into two lots. I'd also like to ask the councillor to open this report for discussion. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Hodge is opening it for a discussion. Who's seconding that? Councillor Cardew. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, thanks very much. I'd like to, even though the recommendation is for refusal, I'd like to take a positive view on this application. I think there is a lot of information in the report that really doesn't, and it's not the officer's fault, that they've got information from DAF and those sorts of stuff. And it makes it look like it's not viable, or shouldn't be. But we know through discussions that in regards to like cattle and all that sort of stuff, that's exactly completely different what's in what DAF says. So I don't take that information as correct. It's not the officer's fault. They've got to put the information as what they receive. So I'll leave that as not a negative, but as a positive. And at the end of the day as well, it is not our role to say whether someone can sell a piece of land. That is not this council's role. If that person wants to sell that land, that's their right. We don't take people's rights away. So with that, we have a new set of conditions for this that our planners have provided with us. Thanks very much. Everyone has had the new conditions. So without further discussion from me or anyone else wants to put other views on it, I'm happy to move the alternate resolution that be approved subject to conditions.
So Councillor Hodge is moving the alternative motion. Do we have a second? Councillor Wiltz is seconding that. All right, Councillor Hodge has moved. Councillor Wiltz has seconded the alternate motion, which is up on the screen there. Councillors, who would like to talk to that? Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I support the alternative motion. Yes, it will, this application will cut a smaller block off the larger parcel, and there was some discussion around fragmentation of a larger lot. However, knowing the country up there where it is at Sugarbag, it's broad hectare grazing. So they're very large lots. It's not real good country. The bit that they want to cut off for the feed lot, which is around about 8,300 acres, that will sustain the feedlot without a doubt. Given the cattle industry at the present moment is very strong, and a feedlot situation like that, even if it was the developers or the owner's intention to sell that portion off, it would be a viable business proposition for someone coming in to take it on. And that would leave the remaining lot, the parent lot, at a size of around about 38,000 acres, which, in my view, is still quite large enough to be a profitable scenario for a property owner to make a living off it. In today's market, cattle prices are real good at the moment. I've done some rough calculations with regards to the carrying capacity of the remaining lot, and I've also spoken with adjoining property owners to get an indication of the carrying capacity per acre on that land in that area, and the information I received was 1 head per 20 acres. So breaking all that down, I calculated it out, and in rough terms, I see that they would have a return of around about $1.4 million a year on that property. Now, they're just my figures, and they come straight out of my head. So, knowing a little bit about the cattle industry, I've calculated that, and I'm comfortable with the application because both lots will still be viable in my view.
Thanks, Councillor Kaji. Councillors? Councillor Wills?
Thanks, through the chair, just a comment if I may, and it was a bit remiss with the last topic of discussion. I'd like to thank Kelly and the planning team we gave an extremely short time frame to do up the alternate conditions as we see them today. And I think this is a very sensible approach to this application, and I think the conditions are very appropriate to it. So thanks very much, Ken.
Okay, we've got a motion with a mover and a seconder. The alternate motion, the one on the screen. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Just one quick one there, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank Kelly as well as I spoke to her the other day, for waking me up at 5:30 in the morning with the new set of conditions. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Through the chair, I just have to make it very clear that I was simply the messenger and the reviewer. It was the team that put in the effort.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to 12.3. We need to get Councillor Clifton.
Did you employ Mr. Mayor as a messenger, that fellow?
Say, Andrew, we didn't miss you while you weren't here.
I noticed these new boots.
Mr Caretaker reports the question.
We seem to get through those two items much quicker than normal without you, Councillor.
Yeah, like that. I was just saying that to Christian.
All right, 12.3. Road naming request, Youngaborough Waterfront Estate, stages 6, 7 and Road C. Can I have a mover to open the report for discussion, please? Councillor Clifton, and a seconder, Councillor Wilts. Those in favour? Carried. Councillor Clifton, to you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I in fact have an alternative motion that I'd like to put forward, which I think is up on the board now. Seems to be in talking. May I talk to my alternative motion?
Just as a matter of process, perhaps if you can talk broadly at the moment.
Yep.
And then you can then move your alternative motion. But if you can talk broadly,
Thanks.
perhaps how you got to your alternative motion, or why you got to your alternative motion.
I got to the, I think that what we're putting forward here is only one of 4 properties to be named, and there will be many more, I expect, as that development goes on. I take the point that we need to pick names which don't confuse emergency services. I think that's important. There have been names that have caused confusion to emergency services. One notable incident over in the Kiro area some years ago. So we have to be mindful of the right selection of words, but I think that dealing with them all at once is a decisive way to get a relatively unimportant but important simple matter off the books for us, so we don't have to go and do it again, and waste our officers' time and our time doing that, and also delay the developer, who I'm sure wants to get some of these matters cleared up as quickly as he can. So I advocate dealing with the 4 of them, and that's brought me to this conclusion here. Those are his names, and they are the least offensive in terms of emergency service confusion. So I propose an alternative motion, that one, for those reasons. Simplifying their processes, their names that were chosen by the developer, assisting the developer to get on with his business, and not therefore having to refer automatically back to us in a few months' time to have to do another one. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
So Councillor Clifton is proposing an alternate motion, which we've got up on the screen there. Would anyone like to talk more broadly before I ask for a seconder? Councillor Wills.
Yeah, having a history in emergency services, I totally understand the dramas that can occur. However, there's a big enough difference between the 4. Like the only 2 that are reasonably close is Lakefront and Lakeshore, and even those are so dissimilar. When they're spoken of, I don't think that it's going to cause any dramas at all to emergency services. And to me, the 4 names just carry on the theme of what the estate is, the development is about.
Very good. Councillor Billney?
Yeah, through the chair. I do have concerns with the emergency services situation with namings that are similar or can be construed to be similar. I see the merit in doing the 4 at once. I'm sure Councillor Clifton has done due diligence to make sure that there is no similarities in close proximity that would create potential issues. If that's the case, well, I'm happy to do that.
Very good. I might just put a question to council officers. Are there any red flags that council officers see here with naming the four streets?
So through the chair, the intent was to name the 4 streets originally. Officers concur with Councillor Clifton's view that it's much more efficient to be able to name all of the streets, and that was certainly the intent. When we discussed it with emergency services raised concerns about the use of lake and the use of water, again, because it had been used previously within the subdivision, and their preference was to try and have a very clear, different preface to the street names in an emergency services event, which is why Clearwater Avenue or Clearwater Boulevard, whichever suffix the applicant decided to go with, was the only name that came out in the list of suggested names that didn't have that conflict. So just by example, there's an existing waterfront terrace within the development. So ultimately it's a decision for council. The officer's recommendation is based on advice from emergency services. And we would certainly be happy to work with the applicant in the event that this alternative recommendation doesn't get up, to try and find the most efficient way through for naming the balance of the estate.
So Councillor Clifton's proposing the alternate motion that's up on the screen there. Councillor Clifton's moving that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cardew is seconding that. Any more discussion on this? Councillor Cardew, did you?
No,
Those in favour of the alternate motion that's up on the screen? Carried, thank you.
I take it the reasoning there, Councillor Clifton, is that it's more efficient use of resources to name all four roads for the purpose of the
Yes.
record.
Much more, yes, that's half it. And secondly, Bill, to give clarity to the developer going ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, 12.4. Compliance, WW 106-05, compliance monitoring 2022-2023. Do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation for 12.4? Councillor Hodge. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Bilney? Councillor Hodge.
I will find Mr. Mayor. It's all good.
Councillor Bilney?
No, nothing for me.
Councillors? Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried, thank you. 12.5, 2020-2021 regional sewer relining, contract variation approval. Do I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney, and a seconder? Councillor Hayden? Councillor Bilney?
Look, I think the report states the intent there, and I'm happy to support.
Thank you. Councillors, any comment or question on this one? Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried, thank you. Item 12.6, Brooks Road widening, stage 2 works. Could I ask for a councillor to open the report for discussion? Councillor Hayden, and a seconder, please. Councillor Bilney, Councillor Wilkes, sorry. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. Councillor Hayden.
I sort of support part of this, but I also would like to make an alternative motion, and as it's going to be number 4, I'd like to speak to it.
Yeah, so perhaps if you just tell us your thinking, Councillor Hayden, to get to where you got to. And
Okay, so the Brooks Road project was divided into 2 stages. So to finish stage 1, the council approved an extra $112,000 and a change in scope. Stage 2 recommendation is to adopt the modified cement stabilisation base as a suitable treatment. This is totally different to the tender that went out publicly, that were in the tender documents. I believe that it will be in an unfair disadvantage to other contractors if this is given to the current contractor for an extra $490,000 without going out to tender, as the scope has already been discussed with them, and if council already has organised the scope for stage 2, it could go out to tender next week, so it is open and transparent. The original tender was open on the 26th of February, closed March 22nd, and we awarded it in April at a special meeting. And the weather that we keep claiming that could prolong this job is something we can't change. So I would like to see it go out to tender again for stage 2.
Okay. Before we come back to Councillor Hayden's train of thought here, are there any comments in the broad sense about this? Councillor Bilney?
Through the chair. I also share the sentiments of Councillor Hayden about the project going out to tender for the purposes of meeting our procurement obligations and for transparency. I do also understand that if we go through that tender process, there could be delays in this project by up to 3 months, and potentially then start running into that wet season. By delaying also runs the risk of rising material costs. So we need to be able to balance that out. But I think it does need to go out to tender, in my view.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I understand the concerns of my colleagues, and normally I would agree, but in this particular case, the anomalies that have come through have been through design factors that weren't recognised when the design was done. The road conditions were a lot worse than what was initially thought. So it is, the location of this thing is in the wettest part of our shire. We have, the contractors are already on site, they've already mobilised all their equipment, etc. It's already on site. We are starting to come into the drier part of our season, which makes perfect sense to keep going and getting it done. So if we delay it, again, like Councillor Burnley said, we risk coming back into the wet season again, because we only get a very small window of opportunity in that part of the shire. So whilst I understand the concerns, I can't support them. I'd rather see the amendment to the existing contract, which is perfectly lawful, from my understanding from discussions the other day with the CEO. It's perfectly lawful and in line with our procurement policy, doesn't go outside that. The extra funding that's required to complete Brooks Road, being 490,000, will come out of our rehabilitation program budget. That's a budget, I think, of about $2.5 million for road rehabilitation, and there are no identified roads, to my understanding, that have been identified for this. So it's there to be used where necessary, and the road, the part of the problem is that the existing road is in worse state than what was originally thought. So allocating this money out of the road rehabilitation program fits perfectly in line with that. So while the machinery's there, while we come into our good weather, I think we should complete this project while we have the opportunity, because if we put it back out to tender, we're going to run into the wet season. The costs are likely to come in higher because of the way costs are going at the moment, and it'll just be more complicated and drag on. So while I understand the concerns of my colleagues, I support the officer's recommendation.
Thanks. Councillor Hodge?
Now, I'll just put that discussion, that part of the discussion, just to the right, if you don't mind. I want to know why we're in this position. I wasn't in favour the last time we increased this budget on this Brooks Road, but fine. But we need to be able to say to the people who we represent, why do we got to spend another $500,000? Let's be fair, Nick. Let's open it up and have the proper discussion, and then how we're going to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. Now, I'm pretty sure we have that process going forward in the future through the PMO, but I would like someone to tell me why this happened. Was it the scope was wrong? We didn't do the technical stuff right? Did we open it up in the rain? What happened? Why? We need to understand why these things are happening and how, going forward, hope so that it doesn't happen again. I know, you know, you can get rain and thunderstorms and all this sort of stuff, but we really need to understand why it happened.
So on that question, Councillor Hodge, can I go to the General Manager, and then we might come back to Councillor Hayden, because Councillor Hayden may be waiting to get her motion seconded. So we'll go to the General Manager to respond to that first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the Chair. Why are we now facing the issue of unsuitable soils that we need to apply a different methodology to basically build a road that will stand up for the amount of time that we would expect normally from a road like this? At time of design, a decision was made not to do geotechnical investigations and assume a bearing ratio of the sub-base, which is basically below the pavement. That turns out to be not reflective of what is the actual situation on site. There's significant stretches of the road where the bearing ratio is close to zero. While I think from memory, we assumed a bearing ratio of 10, which basically means that we need to either excavate out the sub-base and apply an improvement by offices, which is very expensive and time consuming, and if we only apply that to the widening section of the road that was initially opened, then that means that you get two different pavements with two different strengths, the existing road and the new road, which will result in reflection cracking and water ingress and future problems. So we looked at that, and to rectify the issue, we decided that it would be a better solution to rehabilitate the existing road while we're also widening the road as well, using the same methodology with stabilized pavement. So in the end, would we have, if we would have done the geotechnical investigations, generally that is done by taking a bore maybe once every 500 meters or once 100 meters, depending on what you choose, you could still have very hit and miss results. You could be sampling and having the issue that where you sample, the condition is still not reflective of the majority of the areas. So it is a bit of a risk, a decision that you make at the time of design. Should we have done, in my view, should we have done some samples in this road? Yes, it was probably not appropriate to not do any samples at all. Would the outcome have been the same? Probably, because we would have likely found that the soils were unsuitable, and we would have had to redesign and have a different solution to this problem, which would have still resulted in significantly more cost than what we initially envisaged. The advantage, if we would have known at that time, would have been that we could have made a decision before we went into construction if we wanted to continue with the project or not with our cost, and now we're sort of, at least for stage one, because we had opened all the widening sections already, we were sort of fully complete. But with stage two, that's why we're here. There is an option to choose to either not do it or to do it differently with like that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it answered my questions. We didn't do the homework, basically.
Not enough.
And just a final question, doing this new method or methodology, what's the in years term, will it last, 15 years, 20 years, doing this new term?
So generally when we to build sealed roads. The seal generally has a life of 12 to 15 years, and then you have to do the seal. The pavement should stand up for 25 years, and I'm pretty confident that with the solution applied here and the traffic loading that road sees, that should easily stand up for 25 years.
All right, we'll come back to Councillor Hayden. Councillor Hayden is proposing an alternate motion that's up on the screen there, and the change is that instead of endorsing the allocation to the existing tenderer, we actually go to re-tender. So Councillor Hayden is moving that motion. Can I ask for a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bilney is seconding that motion. Councillor Hayden, would you like to talk to that again? Or?
Okay, yeah, I'll just say one other thing. So what equipment is needed for mobilisation is up to the contractor and will be reflected by the tenderer in the documents. $500,000 is a substantial amount of money, and it is a disadvantage to others. As this contractor, the current contractor has been the only one that has been consulted, and I believe it will leave a sour note in other contractors. Members.
Thank you. Councillor Clifton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I may direct a question to the General Manager. We've heard about what we didn't do, and picking up Councillor Hodges' theme of our accountability to the community as to the way we're tackling these things. So, in a nutshell, we didn't do it right first. What changes have you made to reflect that we're going to do it right?
Yes, so as previously discussed, we will do a full lessons learned exercise of this project, and that will result in recommendations to change our processes, and obviously we need to do more prep work in the sense of surveying and before we finalise the design and go into tendering. So that will be the change, is that for this type of project we need to do more homework and have a better understanding of the actual circumstances of the project before we finalise the design. So more time and more effort upfront.
Just further to that, the executive manager of the project management office, the general manager and me will look at the works that we've got going ahead for the next 3 years and make some determinations around the level of design and geotechnical investigation that we consider with proper input across the organisations required for each of the projects that we're proposing to undertake across the next 3 years. And that will happen in the next couple of weeks.
We'll go Councillor Bilney.
Through the chair, just for a bit of clarity, should option 4 be endorsed by council, how does the funding mechanism potentially through this road rehabilitation program, how does that come? Because I'd like to see if the funding's coming from somewhere, it should come from there. Is that just a natural evolving thing that will occur, or do we do a budget review, quarterly budget review? Can that be explained?
We wouldn't be proposing to expand the budget. We would propose, regardless of what the tender price is, that the works remain funded from the source that's identified in the recommendation, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you.
Apologies all for my lack of
Councillor Hodge.
Now, in regards to, this is where I'm trying to see if I can get it right. I understand Councillor Hayden's point here. And in normal circumstances, that I believe would be the right way to go. My problem is, and this is through the financial side, is yes, we can go that way and try and keep everyone happy, you know what I mean, so we don't get sort of egg on our face again. Or we have to really think, if we put that out to tender again, and then I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but what is the risk? It's about the risk of what the final amount will be. Now, I understand where Councillor Hayden's coming from, and I really want to back it here, but I'm having difficulty because, okay, if we do that, everyone will keep everyone sort of technically happy. But if we get the tenders come out, put it to tender, and it's 50% again, which it could be with the cost of everything going on these days and the supply, instead of $500,000 at 750, that's the risk I don't think I'm prepared to take. If we can say, this is the question I need to ask now, is the extra $500,000, if we have negotiations with the contractor, that's the price of what it's going to be.
So, through the chair, so the proposed increase in price is based on all the submission from the current contractor, including our own internal additional costs and some contingency applied as well. Because there's still, even with this methodology, there's still some level of uncertainty in some places, so we've built some contingency as well. So this is based on an offer that we received.
Okay. Yeah, so that's my problem. The risk, I think is the risk too high that we're taking if we go back out to tender. That's my real.
Got it. Councillor Billney?
Yeah, through the chair, just to reflect on those comments. At the end of the day, if costs blow out on that stage 2, we can determine whether we want to award that contract or not. We can make that decision at that time. In the event it may even come in a reduced price, so we may have a benefit. Whether that's likely, I don't know, but you know, we can't just look at one side. But ultimately, we can determine whether we proceed with stage 2 down the track.
Councillor, I might give Councillor Hayden the final call, and we can resolve this one. Would you like to have the final say before we go to the vote, Councillor Hayden?
Well, I count 3 months, August, September, October. It could be actually awarded in early October, so we're not going to guarantee this weather outside anyway, so we'll look to the vote. Okay,
so Councillor Hayden's moving the recommendation up on the board there. Councillor Billney seconding. Those in favour? Okay, defeated. All right, do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Cardew. And a seconder, Councillor Wills. Councillor Cardew?
No, I think
Yes, sorry, you're on.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think everything's been said that needs to be said. I'm happy with the officer's recommendation.
Look, councillors, this is a tricky one, and whatever decision council makes, we get reputational damage, whichever way we go. The most important thing is that we fix the road as soon as possible, because if it's not raining out there this week, it'll be raining out there next week. So we've just got to get in and get the job done. I think the general manager and the CEO gave an explanation of how we're going to deal with these things going forward, and that gives all councillors and hopefully the community some comfort that we'll improve our rigour on these things. But whichever way we go, we take a hit. But let's fix the road. It's long overdue. And when I first saw that it was costed at $900,000, I thought, holy dooly, that's fantastic. We're going to do that for $900,000 because it's a really difficult road in difficult area. So the reality was $900,000 was never realistic. But look, councillors, any other councillor Clifton?
Just a point of clarification. Has the $490,000 extension been completely at this stage submitted through the project management office for clearance? Probably I should ask the CEO that question.
I'd have to take that on notice, but I've spoken at length with the executive manager of the office and certainly aware of it. So the answer to that is yes. Is he? Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a word of caution though, we still haven't ripped it all open. So whilst it's understood that this treatment will deal with the issues that we're talking about, can't put my hand on my heart and say that there won't be some other form of latent condition that emerges as the roads are opened up. Just a word of caution. Really trust that doesn't happen, but you just need to keep in mind that latent conditions are things that can't be seen as you're driving around it. So be confident, but can't say with absolute certainty that nothing else would emerge during the construction of stage 2.
Thank you.
Councillor Hodge.
I'd just like to say to Councillor Hayden and Melanie that I really understand their point. You know what I mean? And don't sort of take it personally.
We've got a mover and a seconder for the officer's recommendation. Those in favour? Carried 5-2. Would you like them recorded? Councillors, we might take a morning tea break, so no more than 10 minutes. Can I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hodge is moving. A seconder, please. Councillor Clifton. Councillor Hodge.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. If we go to page 207, it's promising to see that our operating position and net position was not a deficit, but $4.356 million, which is, I have to say, well done to everyone to bring that home. One thing I just wanted to ask the manager of finance is, with our cash now, are we pretty close to knowing what the breakup is of, you know, what's in waste, what's in water, their balances, and the other one is not for today, but I would like to see a report. I think we got one some time ago, probably 18 months ago, about the constrained and unconstrained developer contributions, and if we get a list of that going forward, when you have time. But just the main question is the breakup of the cash. Are we at a position to know what it is?
So if I may, through the chair,
Yes, thank you.
so absolutely. Currently, we have some business units that we treat as business activities. That is our water business, our waste business, and wastewater business, in addition to our caravan parks. Currently, they are treated as business activities under the Local Government Act, and we do know details for them as business activities. What we don't treat them as is significant business activities, which then incorporates additional expenses traditionally, like tax equivalent. So what you need to do is treat them like complete businesses. So that's the detail that's not being applied at this stage. And to do that, that would mean increases to our utility services, because they will now be liable to pay. What we essentially need to do is take away any unfair advantage or disadvantage that these business activities have as being under a local government banner. So taking that away means that any loans applied to them increases would apply to their interest rate, they would be liable to pay tax, all of those types of things. So yes, we do have the details as how we currently treat them, but to that next level of a significant business unit, we don't currently treat them that way.
That's because they don't meet the threshold under the regulation.
Correct, correct.
But we still must have a fair idea of what.
As we currently treat them, absolutely. Yes. For the, if I may through the chair, just for the second part of the question with constrained cash, developer contributions, you'll see on page 209. So every month in the financial report, you'll see component or the balances of developer contributions. that we treat as constrained cash. There's also this constrained cash component in there that relates to grant funds, so any funds that we receive for specific purposes is also treated as constrained. That's reported monthly.
All I'm saying, Mr. CEO, is that later on, can we have a report that says what developed contributions are for trunk infrastructure, all that sort of stuff, and where when it's constrained, where it's supposed to be, where it has to be spent, and where it hasn't, doesn't have to be spent.
Did you request a notice, councillor?
Councillors?
Mr. Mayor, a question at, on page 213, relating to the variations to contracts and arrangements, greater than 20% of the original contract value and a value greater than $5,000. We've got two items there. ARO Industries, project management on the Mary Galvin Bridge. The original contract was $53,000. It's gone out by $15,000. So it's a 28% increase. And then technology one, change 30%. I'm wondering if it's possible, I'm quite happy to take those on notice, if it's not possible to provide an explanation now.
Yeah. If I may, through the chair, thank you for the question. So, the continuation of the American Bridge project and the additional purchase order for Aero Industries in relation to that is due to the fact that Aero Industries does our project management and contract management over the construction phase for that project, and we engage generally consultants for those type of works on an hourly rate basis with an estimated expenditure at the start based on what we believe the construction period is going to be and the amount of effort that they would have to put into managing the contractor and the project as well. As you are aware, there have been some issues on this project which have resulted in an extended period of construction time, which means that there's also an extension required of the project management and contract management services by the consultant. So basically, this is additional hours, again based on an estimate at the time that we raised the purchase order for the additional time that they needed to spend on contract and project management project, due to the fact that it's taken longer to deliver.
Just coming by way of explanation to my thinking, coming from a commercial background, as I did for many years, where people quoted for engineering and subcontracting, all sorts of things. At the end of the day, it wasn't sort of hourly rated, it was the job. And if you ran over the job and you had to put more into it, well, that was because you didn't get it right when you won. So these sorts of ones are hourly rate rather than job rate, than a contract rate. Do we engage in contract rates with these people?
Again, it depends on what we engage them for and our level of certainty around the level of service and the extent of the services that we require from them at the start. So if it's not able to be really well defined, the hourly rate is potentially more advantageous to us because we can, throughout the project, manage their input and efforts, and we can make decisions as we go as to we need them longer or not. For this type of project, if we would have gone out on a lump sum basis, they could have potentially gone back with a significant risk component built into their price, which might not have eventuated in the end, but then you pay for it because that's the lump sum. So every time when we engage a contractor or a consultant, we make an assessment based on the level of information that we have and our assessment of risk, which way of procurement is the most favourable for council. And in this case, we decided to go on an hourly rate basis because of the uncertainties around the efforts required from them in this project.
Thank you. And then the second one was the 30% overrun on the technology one, RMPC change.
Yes, so if I may, through the chair again, thank you. So our RMPC contract, so that's the road maintenance performance contract with Main Roads. Main Roads requires specific reporting on a monthly and an annual basis in relation to how we are progressing the delivery of that contract from a financial perspective, and that is not aligned with our internal standard reporting on a financial basis for our own internal project. So an assessment was done to see if it would be advantageous to amend the scope for Technology One to include that within the project and have that all in the one system, or to purchase an external system, and the one that Mainroads generally prefers is called Reflect. And based on the financial analysis, it was decided that it was more advantageous for council to incorporate that scope within the Technology One program rather than having a separate system.
Can I just, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question on that if you don't mind?
Yeah, has that answered your question?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so councillor Hodge.
With that RMPC, where I'm sort of, I don't know how many councils use Technology One. There's heaps of them. So everyone would think would be in the same boat with that change on how the Department of Transport wants you to report. So under normal circumstances, you'd think all the councils get together and say, well, this is Technology One, yep, this is how all our systems are set up. If Mainroads want to change, well, for a start, why don't they pay for it? I just can't understand it if the software is sort of standard, and Mainroads will change how we report, and we got to do it through Tech One. Do all the other councils on Tech One doing the same thing?
So through the chair, I don't know what all other councils are doing, but my understanding is that the majority of councils use the other system, Reflect, but that means that you have two financial systems again, and one of the objectives of the Tech One upgrade was to align all our asset management and financial systems in the one program, so we've got one point of truth. A lot of councils historically already used Reflect when they went and upgraded their Tech One, and they made the decision potentially to keep the Reflect system. However, in our view, that was not advantageous to us to go that way. We haven't had Reflect in the past, so we've managed from Tech One in the past, but with this upgrade, they require additional configuration, if I understand correctly, to make sure that the reporting out of the system aligns with what Mainroads need.
Okay.
And yes, no, we did ask the question if because Mainroads has indicated that they would like us to use Reflect, because that is, if they get all the information from the same system, that's their preference, but they were not willing to pay for it, so no, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Clifton.
I have just a couple more questions. One related to, on page 219, PLD Holdings trading as professional pump services and irrigation, Herberton water treatment plant spares $22,000. You may recall that I received an email from a local contractor who is able to supply those parts, but who says that they were never contacted to provide a price.
So again, through the chair, thank you for that question. So for that specific procurement for the Herberton water treatment plant, and this relates to the ultrafilter treatment installation in there. Council officers approached 3 businesses, including 2 local businesses, and actually all local businesses, because Professional Pump Solutions, although they have their main office in council since August 2020, they also have a presence in the Tablelands in Wongerville. So we've proposed 3 businesses, of which we believe all 3 were local, and Professional Pump Solutions provided the best value offer, and could also offer all items requested through the voting process.
Well, if I may just, can I ask you to ensure that Tableland Pump and Irrigation are on your suppliers lists that you contact for these quotes in the future? Because they say they never received.
Yeah, they were not asked to vote. No.
So they were not.
3 other businesses were asked to vote.
And then, sorry, for me to take up all this time, but the last set relates to those Artcraft signs at the end of on page 221, $45,000 worth of signs, collectively. Is it worthwhile looking at whether there is a viable other supplier, or have you done that already?
So again, through the chair, thank you for this question. So officers approached 3 businesses to quote for provisional sign for 4 different main roads, including the local business sign hub. 2 of the businesses asked to provide quotes, couldn't provide all the items requested, and Artcraft was the only one that provided a comprehensive compliant quote, including all materials required at favourable prices.
Yeah, just one more in that, it's on page 220, it's to do with P&E law, it's to do with the headwork charges for Cairns Plywood, which is the rank and developer. Do we go out to them, or probably through you, to you, Mr. CEO, do we get them to work out what the headworks charges are, or I assume our planning scheme would be quite capable of doing that?
I don't know that details. I'll take it on the notice, councillor.
Thank you. Sorry, more questions. Capital project number, page 226. Footpaths Kirai deferred as item 4. I'm glad my cataracts are not as successful as yours, Mr. Mayor. Item number 452, and then number 461, footpaths Big Street, Youngaborough, not commenced and at risk. Could you give me a better update than a more specific update than this referral here?
Yes, and thank you through the chair again. So the Fifth Street pedestrian crossing and extension of the footpath from I think the Ash Street footpath to the pedestrian crossing and then into North Keele Park was commenced last year. So we did some significant investigation and design. The concern that we ran into is that we need to provide sufficient banking ability for 90-metre length long trucks, which means that the pedestrian crossing needs to be far enough into Fifth Street to allow banking of a truck to occur in a safe manner. This then complicates the matter because that means that we have to extend the footpath along the corner into Fifth Street, and there's a private property that sort of juts out, and the actual existing footpath to come through the middle area. So we've been trying to resolve that through the design in conjunction with the requirements of the PMR, and unfortunately we didn't manage to finish that project in time to carry into construction in the previous financial year. So we're proposing to carry it over into this year as a first budget review and finalise the project this year.
And the footpaths at Kirai?
Footpaths in Kirai. Sorry, I'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, councillors, we've got a mover and a seconder for the financial report. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. Item 13.2, Code of Conduct and Gifts, Benefits and Conflicts of Interest Policy. Can I have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Do we have a mover? Councillor Hodge is moving. Seconder, please. Councillor Wiltz. Councillor Hodge.
Oh, no, I'm all fine with it. I think there was just a slight tinkering on the original one, so happy to do it all. It's more to do with the employees, not councillors.
Councillor Kaji.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I don't support this at all. I started reading these two policies, and to be honest with you, I found it very difficult. I thought it was very bureaucratic, very complicated. It appears that there's been a lot of external input from Preston Law, that it's been, I would suggest, you know, probably been written by a lawyer, because it certainly reads like one. Putting myself into the shoes of an employee of council, I doubt very much whether they, let alone being able to read it, they certainly wouldn't be able to understand it. It's too bureaucratic, it's too complicated, too convoluted, and I think they both documents need to be simplified. I thought we had an arrangement where any of these policies or the like would be workshopped with council prior to coming to council meetings. I can't recall this one being workshopped, these two documents being workshopped. I may be wrong, but I don't support them. I think they're too bureaucratic, very hard to understand, and how any of our employees would understand that other than perhaps the people in this room. Yeah, it's just not user friendly, so I don't support them at all.
I'll take those questions, Mr Mayor. Firstly, the content of the Code of Conduct and the policy largely set out in legislation, so yes, they look like they're driven by legislation in essence because they are. The content of them and the review from Preston Law relates to particular matters that have been the subject of review by external parties, and I won't go into that in an open meeting, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to discuss that if you're prepared to close the meeting at the end of the day. It's not permitted by legislation to discuss that here, and they do necessarily contain elements that deal with that. In terms of understanding, we'll provide an abbreviation, if you like, of the Code of Conduct, which sets out the salient points, and we'll provide training around that. But to water down the wording that's contained in either of the documents leaves us exposed in terms of meeting the obligations that have been placed on us by that external party to ensure that particular things do not occur again.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions or comment on this one?
Probably just one question, just as a right of reply. Just a question, CEO, has the employees, do they see this before it comes here for comment, or not really? Not really.
No.
Organisations aren't democracies.
And there's some documents that are driven, some documents that we can have significant consultation around, and some that are driven largely by the statutes themselves. These fall under the second umbrella, driven by the statutes themselves, and whilst we would all like it to have simplified, easy to read documents, the law itself sets out what has to be covered, and in this case, how we respond is being very much looked at as part of an external review that went on this year. Well, I just want to park it there. Appropriate to say more.
Okay. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carrie, would you like that to read? You can record Councillor Cardews against, thank you. 13.2, oh sorry. 13.3, Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, 15 June 2022. Can I, Councillor, you moving?
Yes.
Councillor Clifton is moving. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hodge, Councillor Clifton.
I have nothing to add. Mr Mayor, they're explanatory and clear.
Councillors, any questions on this one? Comment? Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Hodge. 4, appointment of chair, audit risk and improvement committee. Have a mover of the officer's recommendation, Councillor Wilts, and a seconder, Councillor Clifton. Councillor Wilts.
No, the officer's recommendation is fairly good finding from the information that's contained in the report.
Thank you. Councillors, any comment on this one? Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried, thank you. Thank you. Um, 13.5, the community plan. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney. And a seconder, Councillor Wills. Councillor Bilney.
Chair, I'd just really like to thank the community that have been involved in informing the community plan, as well as Nicole and Blake that have done a fantastic job driving it. In my view, this plan will set goals, objectives, policies and programs to address specific issues related to our community. It will also assist in better decision making, building community compliance with legislation and the empowerment of communities. I look forward to the launch of the plan and working towards some positive outcomes as outlined by the focus groups that have been involved. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bilney. Councillors?
Oh, no, very happy with it. Yeah, great to see it all finalised and all ready to go. So, all great.
Now the work begins.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the integration into our documents, to see how they get into immersion, look updated.
Yeah. Nicole or Blake, would you like to talk briefly about the plan, or? Yeah, it's optional, but if you'd like to punch some things home or talk about something about the plan.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah. Through the chair, I'd like to acknowledge the deputation this morning and the work of all the community input. It's been fantastic around the breadth of concepts and ideas and the passion of people to come forward and provide insights as part of this journey. As discussed, the implementation is what's critical. We have a clear expectations around where we'd like to see the region evolve, and it's a partnership approach with council and key stakeholders. So I'd like to acknowledge, whilst we've been a part from an officer perspective, there has been lots of other people involved in this process, and I acknowledge everyone's contributions.
Very good. Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Nicole, can I just ask you, or Blake, Peter might have the information, it looks like this focus group was pretty well attended. It was representative and good representation right across the board.
Yeah.
So that was, like you see a lot of surveys and things come past us, and with very, very low numbers, and then we're expected to make, decisions on surveys, or where we are expected to make decisions on surveys, information, and you only get a handful of people, completing those surveys or giving input into it. This seems to be done by a large group, and which is good. It's good that the brush is swept right across the entire TRCA. Thank you.
The only comment is I would have liked to have seen someone from Mount Gunn. Now it's been included, and one from Ravensay. Would have been good to actually see that part of the world actually included into some of this. So one of them knew about it. So.
Councillors?
Councillor, one thing, yeah, look, once again, thanks very much. I think this will be, once it's implemented, it'll be great for my town of Atherton, and just not my town of Atherton, but of course all the little satellite towns around. We'll get a great benefit out of it. So, great for the TRC.
Through the chair, just a quick response to Councillor Hayden. You are correct. There were a few gaps. You didn't really have great representation from Walkerman either. We will obviously endeavour to give those communities an opportunity to implement some of these. There's 114 sub-aims in that community plan, and many of them will relate to communities like Mount Garnet. So we will make sure they get to be heard as well.
Very good, thank you. All right, councillors, those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much. Right, that brings us to item 14.1. So we've got a notice of motion, Councillor Clifton, provide the opportunity to enable the construction of high density housing. Councillor Clifton, I might, so Jackie's got that up on the screen. Maybe best, Councillor Clifton, if you seek a seconder first for your motion, and then we can talk to it. So Councillor Clifton's got the motion, draft motion up there on the board. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Clifton's motion? Councillor Cardew is seconding. Councillor Clifton, over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think my report is a bit self-explanatory, and doesn't seek to, it seeks to ask officers to give us a report, not to take a decision to close a park or do anything of that nature, but to begin the process. There may be other areas of land and potential sites, but I think the figures contained on page 306 are really interesting. They were put together by the excuse me, Economic Development Officer. We're way down in terms of medium and high density housing options. 7% of dwellings is medium and high density compared to 23% in regional Queensland, 24% Queensland, 27% across Australia. So this is only a start. There may be other steps we can take, but it does begin to demonstrate that we're moving towards trying to deal sensibly with our homes and housing shortage problems that we've got particularly in Atherton in this case. Excuse me, like the rest of the other councillors and the CEO will get a bit of a COVID effect, post-COVID effect.
Very good, thanks, Councillor Clifton. Anyone else?
I would regret it if we both fell silent, Councillor, I'm sure.
Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I support this this motion to try and have that parcel of land for medium to high density housing. It's not an ideal block. It's a triangle block, constrained by road frontages all the way around on all sides. One being a state controlled road, which would have noise corridor provisions. So it's only a 4,800 square metre block, and I know there has been some suggestion that this block has been looked at with regards to the suitability of housing to increase our housing stocks. Putting my old certified hat on, this block is too constrained to allow for too many houses on it. At best, you might get 4 at best. Whereas if you go down the medium to high density development, you can go 2-storey unit type development on there with the constraints that this block has, and probably achieve more livable units than you would if it was just housing. So definitely not suited for housing, more suited for medium to high density housing. So with that, I support this.
Thank you. Councillor Building.
Through the chair, look, I think it's a fair consideration. It also has synergies with the investment incentive policy we endorsed last month, so it's probably timely that we look at that as well.
Very good. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, look, I support the report coming, and we can look at it and whatever options that can come up. Probably just, yes, I don't want to say too much because the way to the options comes with it. And whether, you know, it's just thinking aloud that, you know, we can't even, we don't manage our own units and all that now. We sort of sub that out. So I can't see us looking at that, but I don't intend to. I wouldn't be supporting to give the land away for nothing. But I'll just wait and see what the report comes up and what options there is.
Thanks very much. Okay, councillors, we've got a mover and a seconder of Councillor Clifton's motion. Those in favour of Councillor Clifton's motion? Thank you, carried. Okay, councillors, item 15, business without notice. There is one business without notice which I flagged at pre-agenda on Tuesday. At our ordinary meeting of 21 October 2021, we identified a steering committee for Priors Creek, and our resolution identified the mayor as being on that committee, but said that there needed to be 2 other councillors, which we didn't nominate at that time. So I'd like to propose this morning that those 2 councillors be Councillor Hodge and Councillor Wilts, and that we also nominate Councillor Cardew as a proxy for those councillors, or indeed for myself if for some reason I'm not there. So perhaps Councillor Cardew can be a proxy for any absentee, any elected absentee on that steering committee that might be functional. Yep. So we've got that there, that we now nominate Councillor Hodge and Councillor Wilts to be on the committee, Councillor Cardew to be the proxy for any elected absentees. Yeah. So I'd like to move that motion. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Cardew seconding. Any comments, councillors? Those in favour of the recommendation on the screen? Carried, thank you. That brings an end. Oh, you do? Sorry. Councillor Cardew has business without notice. To you, Councillor Cardew.
Thanks, man. I've got 2 items that I want to raise. Firstly, the first one is in regards to the intersection of Raleigh Road and the highway at the Condetta. I know the highway is a state-controlled road and Raleigh Road is a council-controlled road, but I brought this matter up before earlier through the CR system, but I am continually being called upon to do something with the vision at that intersection. And I recall in the first months of our term, we did an inspection up at Raleigh Road with most of the councillors, and we did stop at that intersection and look at the problems or the issues with visibility. As a one-off, through the CR system, the general manager arranged for the grass and whatnot to be mowed, and to open up those lines of sight, which was done. However, that was well over 12 months ago now. It's all regrown back, and there's also a tree shrub type thing there outside the property boundaries in the road reserve that is causing the bulk of the issues. So I'm just wondering, what do we need to do to be able to get this onto a regular maintenance regime, whether it be through RMPC or through council's own maintenance of Wally Road, to get those lines of sight opened up. It's only on the line of sight, looking, if you have parked at the stop sign or give way sign at the intersection, it's the line of sight towards the roadhouse. I'm just wondering, what do we need to do, because I am continually bombarded about this the visibility at this intersection, and I've been there myself, and yes, it is an issue. So I'm just wondering, where can we go to from here?
So can I put that question to you, Mark? Is that one that comes under your...
Well, through the chair, so we can, I can definitely bring it up again at the Transport Advisory Committee meeting and have a discussion with Main Roads. As indicated by Councillor Cardew previously, the vegetation management that we did there about a year ago was a one-off, and we paid for it ourselves because Main Roads is of the view that the line of sight visibility meets requirements on that intersection. So obviously, as a council, as a contractor to Main Roads, we've got no ability to basically determine how the contract money is being spent. So if council is of mind that we want to do additional work on that intersection out of council funds, then we can do that over our generic road corridor permit because it's minor maintenance. But if council is of mind that they want a formal response from DMR in relation to the investigation and visibility of that intersection and what may have to be done to improve that to the standards, then I would have to request that through Main Roads. So I'm happy to do that.
Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Mark. Look, I understand what you're saying about taking it through the Main Roads again. My understanding is that the residents along Riley Road have already been to Shane Canoe's office without any joy at all, and he was supposed to be taking it further for him, which I'm not sure what the circumstances are, but nothing's been done. So what I'm suggesting is, we've got to drive right past that intersection to do maintenance on Riley Road anyway. It's only a short bit. It's only one of those big shrubs to be removed. If we could just incorporate that into our general maintenance on Riley Road, just to have that line of sight opened up for all of our residents' sake along that road.
So the shrub is just a wild shrub. No, it's not.
It's
not being planted, has it?
No,
it's just growing up.
It's just growing up against the property boundary, from my understanding. So it just needs to be removed and some of the grass knocked down, just to open up that thing for the benefit of the residents along Riley Road. So if I need to move a motion to have that included in our maintenance regime for Riley Road, I'm happy to do so.
What's your advice, CEO? Should we have a motion for that, or?
Doesn't hurt, Mr.
Yeah. Councillor Cardew is moving a motion that
the Riley Road intersection be included in our local maintenance for Riley Road.
Will that cover it, Mark?
Yeah.
We don't. We just have to make sure we can remove the shrub, that's all. We don't pull out some endangered species.
Okay, so Councillor Cardew is moving that motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hodge is seconding. You happy with that, Kev? That's up to you. Those in favour? Carried. 6-1.
Would you like that recorded?
My second issue, my second business without notice is, can I ask for an update on the B-double access into the land, show you where we're at with it?
Yes, is that one you can provide, Mark?
I'll take that on notice.
I guess I'll take it up those councillors. We'll get a response out to everyone before the weekend. So where it currently sits.
So we're going to, yeah, they're going to take it on notice and we'll get advice back by the weekend. Any more?
No,
That's it. Councillor Clifton?
Just again, a question on notice in relation to the tree planting project. The status of, remember we were seeking extra property owners to plant trees. Are we able to get an update now, or I'm happy if it goes on notice?
We just haven't done notice, and I'll just check what the final agreed date was, end of this month, if I recall correctly. But anyway, I'll take notice as well, councillor, and we'll give you an update to where that's at.
Thanks.
We may have to do some further conversations with other funding partners and that, and then come back to you about a collective view.
Thank you.
Yes, look, I haven't had time to talk to Councillor Wilkes, but it's in his area. He did come to me yesterday. It's in regards to the new upgrades section on Bentry and Albright Street in the industrial estate. We put a new stop sign there, and what they believe is it's too far to the south, so when they pull up, this is just a question of notice, I don't need a resolution. When they pull up, they can't see anyone coming to the right. So they've got to move out, and all of a sudden the traffic's there. So what they're saying, can the stop sign be pushed forward a bit? So they have a view. So that's basically.
Can be pushed forward closer to Bentry.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be the answer, I imagine. I've been through it, I didn't notice any difficulty, but anyway.
Yeah, I have too, and I've had the same concerns and the same complaint.
Yeah, I went through there yesterday and turned right, didn't feel like I had any issues at all, there you go.
Did you stop?
You weren't driving a B-double.
You're lucky there's no cars coming.
Very easy, I didn't beat double, wasn't it? I was in my old AU, if I stick my foot down, she does still go. Most days.
Right. I don't think there's any further business without notice. So we'll close the meeting. Meeting closed. Thank you.
Well done.